All right. Your mailbag questions. We're going to kick it off with a 5-star review mailbag question. As always, if you guys leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts with your question, we will for sure answer it on the Wednesday show. This one comes from Matt Mick C87. He says, my question is about TJ Watt and JJ Watt. I know that at his peak, JJ is probably a top 2 to 3 defensive lineman of all time, but how close are we to acknowledging that TJ might end up with the better overall career? TJ has a DPOY, has won the sack title in 3 separate seasons, and tied Strahan's record in less than 16 full games played. Since Big Ben's elbow exploded in 2019, we only win when TJ literally gifts us our offense the ball in enemy territory. TJ leads the league in forced fumbles by a mile since coming to the NFL and is only 24 away from the all-time record, which isn't that far-fetched when he gets 5-7 a season. Obviously, JJ has 3 DPOYs, but I would argue TJ should have at least one more. But I think JJ winning 3 has actually hurt him because of voter fatigue. What do you guys say when we look back? Who will be the better Watt?
Man, this is an amazing mailbag question. What was his name again, Mike?
Matt Mick C87.
Matt, shout out to Matt. Amazing question, because even though we're about to discuss this, I wonder at like family dinners in the off season, is this discussed at the Watt table?
Yeah,
right? Because they do a lot of stuff together still.
I think JJ loves his brother so much and is so proud of him, and he's always my brother is better than me.
Yeah, but I mean,
I have an opinion on it though.
There was a span.
I have an opinion.
There was a span when JJ Watt was unblockable, and he was catching touchdowns on offense,
and he played every position on the defensive line. That's the only thing. I'm as an offensive lineman, to echo your sentiments, JJ Watt was the most hated man on the face of the earth when it came to the offensive side of the ball. Yeah. We hated him not only because he beat us. He was Arnold Schwarzenegger, and we were the guys that got killed in the gun scenes every single week. It was the offensive line, and not only was he better than everybody, but he was in commercials, and he was he's on TV, and he's built like an Adonis. TJ Watt is one of the best edge rushers to ever play the game. Correct. But I think if I'm going to be starting a football team and I have to pick one of these guys, I'm going to pick JJ because he plays all along the defensive front. Yeah. Literally can put his hand down over a guard, can line up at the 0 nose, can line up at the 9, can line up at the 5, anywhere. Now as a D lineman, talk about it.
Yeah, so when you talk about the versatility, I think that does give an edge to JJ. I actually talked about what he did on offense too. So now you even got a player you can put on offense in the red zone and throw fade balls to. And he comes down with the football because people forget he played tight end first in college and in high school before moving to the defensive side. The one thing about TJ Watt, though, I think he's the second fastest player to get to 100, only behind one of the GOATs in Reggie. White. So it's just like, that's rare air.
It's like,
right?
Pick your poison.
Yeah. So, but like, I think the defensive player of the year is obviously swaying JJ's favor. But to Matt's point, you know, TJ probably should have 2 or 3 more.
There's a Myles Garrett last year.
Myles Garrett, that one, people were saying TJ could have potentially won that one. Tying Strahan's record, something that JJ never did. And I think one less game too, right? Because he was banged up. It's something that people aren't talking about.
It's unbelievable.
But I would have to give, because of what you said, the edge to me has to go to JJ just because of the versatility, not only on the defensive line, but again, what he did on offense as well. Like, now if TJ goes out there and lines up and tight end and catches a few touchdown passes,
which he
probably could do that. We can revisit this conversation. But I think what JJ did for like a 5-6 year span was utterly ridiculous. And then I think his last year, if I'm not mistaken, he had 13 or something like that.
He had 10 in Arizona last year.
He had double digit his last year.
Moonlighting as a football player.
It's so like, now, if TJ does that his last year, again, we can revisit this conversation. And he did it with the Arizona Cardinals. Like, again, not throwing any shade to them, but it's just like this dude, JJ Watt, was utterly ridiculous. And again, teams game plan for him, but it's hard to game plan for somebody that moves up and down the line of scrimmage. You know, TJ Watt is lining up at right end or to left end. No, left end.
He's over your right tackle.
Yeah, right tackle. Left end. He's going to line up at left end majority of the time. Now, he does go to the other side a little bit, but he predominantly stays as the left end because Alex Highsmith is on the other side.
He could have been a better hockey player from what I've heard from people that knew J.J. Watt when he was younger.
Freak athlete,
I've talked to people that have like literally, you know, those people that are fans of sports, but they're not big football guys. They're hockey guys. They're like, no, you guys stole him.
I heard he's a really good
You guys stole the next best player ever.
I heard he was a really
from
good
us.
Player. They say he still plays from time to time.
JJ's, he is a manimal. That's a great mailbag question. Thank you.
I'll say this. When I'm thinking of just who was, you know, looking back on careers, who was like, you know, ranking guys, it's about their peak, in my opinion. And no one's peak touched J.J. Watt's peak over the past 20 years. Since Reggie White retired,
he was a god.
No one had a peak that touched his at the defensive end position. And his injury history, he had 5 separate surgeries on torn muscles, a torn elbow ligament, broken nose, broken hand, multiple back surgeries.
We know the broken nose.
The nose,
we know
gushing blood out there.
He's a camera 1, camera 2.
Yeah, he had about as bad an injury luck as you'll see from a truly star player.
He was a warrior.
lot of times I feel like star players, I don't say don't get hurt, but don't have that following him the way they did. And
it was a 3-year span. It was bad.
He just couldn't see the field.
Yeah.
From 2016 through 2019, he missed 3 seasons in that space.
Well, the schedulers fucked up and put me against JJ week 1 in Houston. I was like, well, this is the healthiest he's going to be all year.
This is the freshest he's going to be for sure.
Oh man. All right.
So JJ Watt was so good that it would be the off season. And, we obviously got the schedule. I knew we were going to play in Houston. And the only text I would get from my dad for a 2-month, segment, he'd wake up at 6 a.m. to text me, what do you think he's doing right now?
I love that your dad did that.
Or it would be 8 o'clock at night and he'd be 99 ?
I love that your dad did that.
That is
you in that mentality.
That is how powerful JJ Watt was.
That even it was week 1.
10, he's are you getting ready? Because he is.
I love that. I love every bit of that.
All right, next mailbag question comes from Jake Liskow. He says, what does it feel like for an offense when you just don't get what you're expecting and the defense keeps metaphorically throwing paper when you're sure they're going to throw scissors this time, so you call rock? So basically, when they got your number, what does it feel like?
Well, if they have the right pressures dialed up or they've got the right matchup on the defensive line, sometimes you can't control what they're going to do in terms of how they're going to line up, but we have to just know the personnel. If we have the body types to be able to run good versus all plays, we're going to have to run good versus all plays and get out of these situations and force you to cover different parts of the field, force you to kind of get back into that base situation.
To me, essentially, he's talking about when Brian Flores has your number, right? We saw what he did to C.J. Stroud and the Houston Texans for a half, what he did against Green Bay. Now, the one team for the last couple of years has had success against him is the Detroit Lions, right? And that's because they have the offensive line that can withstand
good versus all.
Exactly, right? When you're looking at player for player, again, players win. Yeah, I love coaching, but players do win the game on the field, right? You got to have some guys, right, to win football games. So essentially, we kind of talked about this, I think 3 weeks ago, having answers for pressure, right? You got to have answers to the test. You got to have enough bullets in the chamber to win games, right? You have to be able to counteract what the defense is doing. And that's why a lot of teams have struggled this year because they haven't had answers to pressure, which, again, after watching film, how do you not know certain pressures are coming?
The answers to the tests are on the film.
There's tails there. Now, again, I would say what Vance Joseph has done, what Brian Flores has done, they've kind of taken it to the next level as far as sending simulated pressures, actually sending all-out pressures. And sometimes you think pressure's coming and it's actually not coming.
Comes from the other side.
Case in point, Aaron Rodgers got in London thinking that Van Ginkel was dropping, even though that one was a pretty simple one because it was on tape where when they double A mugged the linebackers, whoever the center turned to, that's the guy that was dropping out in coverage. So, again, you just got to know these things that are coming and have answers to the test. If you don't, it's going to be a long day.
Yeah, something as simple as, to your point, double A mug, which we see a lot. 4 defensive linemen, 2 linebackers flanking the center. That's the double A mug. So mug is these guys up, double A gap. When you mic it verbally and you have to tell your other offensive linemen and tell your quarterbacks, the smart linebackers, the smart quarterbacks, they anticipate that because of how they're aligned, we're going to mic Van Ginkel. So obviously the smart guys are flip it.
Exactly.
Flip it. So you've seen the offenses now be who I point to is opposite of who we're going to.
That's a chess
match. Then you get into that chess match. Sometimes you have to go to the sideline and say, that's off. We're going back to call
Correct.
It. You know what I'm saying? That is the chess match.
Got to be able to think, man.
That you don't see unless you're at that line of scrimmage.